You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Hosting tonight's provincial election roundtable is Chris Sumner.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us on the Golden West Radio Network, and we are now live with Decision 2016 across southern Manitoba, and we are here in our studios in Altona broadcasting our election roundtable, Decision 2016. We have an excellent evening ahead of us here. Polls are now closed across southern Manitoba. 8 o'clock is when our polls closed, and we have our roundtable election guests that will be joining us here on the radio. We're also broadcasting live across the internet this evening on several of our websites. Pembina Valley Online, Discover Westman, Steinbach Online, and PortageOnline.com. So how about we introduce our guests first? We're going to start with the guest to my right, I suppose, and that would be Steinbach Marin Association of Manitoba Municipalities President Chris Gertzen. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Also, we have Dan Mazer. Dan Mazer is the president of Keystone Agricultural Producers.
Good evening.
And former MP and MLA Merv Tweed is joining us as well.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight, gentlemen. And I think where we want to start to first is the polls have just closed. Obviously, we'll start seeing some results coming in here very shortly. In general, Merv, how about we start with you as a politician who's been, on the other side of the coin, awaiting the election results to come in. What were your general thoughts on the election campaign from a 30,000-foot view, if you will?
I thought it was an interesting campaign. It started out slow, and I think there were so many things happening, and obviously people started to focus in the last 14 days, and you saw the campaign kind of change gears at that point where it got a little more aggressive, a little more personal, and I think that just reflects how the campaign went right to the last day in the sense of a little bit of name calling and a little bit of shouting back and forth. See how the results turn out tonight.
How about you, Dan? What was your thoughts from the big picture perspective on how this campaign went about?
I think like reflecting back from the federal election and that gamut of what we ran for was 12 weeks or something. And then really that comparison to the provincial election was sort of that nice quiet beginning. No one really knew what everybody stood for in that. And it definitely wound up at the closing days, that's for sure.
And how about you, Chris, as I throw my pen across the table here? That's the great thing about radio. Normally no one can see those sorts of things, but now that we're webcasting tonight, people are going to be seeing that. Chris, obviously president of Association of Manitoba Municipalities. From your perspective, what did you think of the campaign as a whole?
Well, it was an interesting campaign. It wasn't just a 6-week campaign like we're used to. It really feels as though this campaign has been going on for quite some time, really from when the whole gang of five, or whatever they called themselves, started out saying that the premier wasn't the one that they wanted leading their party. I think that's really where the campaign started, and we've been talking about politics for some time. Over the last number of weeks, we've seen it obviously escalating, but I think it's really been something that's been building over quite a number of months.
So obviously we had a campaign that was pretty testy at times, and I think it would be fair to say that for Manitobans it rung true to maybe American-style politics at certain points. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what seems to have been a bit of a trend, especially in the last 7 to 10 days of more so personal attacks rather than issues debate. And I guess, Chris, how about we start with you and your thoughts?
Well, being in politics to some degree, although not on the provincial level, I think it's always disappointing when you see personal attacks or desperate attacks happening. And I think some of that was going on. You want politics to be about ideas. You want politics to be about the people you're representing. And it is unfortunate when it goes in that direction. But in the end, you end up with a government, and hopefully they serve the people.
All right. How about you, Dan? What did you think?
The debates is what I really noticed the difference at the AMM. That was the first time we see all the leaders. And then the last one I saw on CTV, I think it was, and we recorded it and everything like a true political junkie. And that one, I was quite surprised just how aggressive everything got. I thought the Green Party, actually, out of all that, he really held his own. I thought James Bedham did a really good job that way, as the first time I actually saw him. But that was the biggest contrast I saw in everything. And I think the debates helped. It was too bad they were calling, like, even when they had their individual ridings debates and there were certain people not showing up and all that. It's too bad that happens, because that's probably the only time that people really get that true taste what the people are like running.
Now, Merv, obviously you've spent an extensive amount of time in the provincial and federal arena, and I'm sure you've been involved in some fairly heated debates and back and forth in the past. What did you think with what I feel some Manitobans would have described as a little bit of American-style politics here toward the end of the campaign?
I think what I found more than anything, again, having represented Southwest Manitoba, Brandon, and the larger area, people don't appreciate that. You know, I can remember running federally for the first time and put an attack ad out, and I got more feedback from my supporters than I did from anybody else. And it's a lesson. And I think when they see that, you know, we were always taught growing up, if you turn it personal, you've probably lost the argument. And I think that's probably how the government of the day felt at the time, and felt that they had to crank it up. If the numbers suggested are accurate when you're fighting for survival, it becomes whatever you have to do, and unfortunately we saw that.
Wanted to talk a little bit about your individual priorities, of course, from your perspective, whether it's AMM cap or someone who's taking more of an overview from a former political member yourself, Merv. And perhaps we'll start with you. When you look at the parties that were involved, the four major parties, of course, what did you feel had to be announced to really engage Manitobans into this election?
You know, you kick around the usual suspects of healthcare and education, and obviously very important. I was disappointed that we didn't hear a lot about the environment. I think it's a big issue for producers in particular, and you know, going forward, how we're going to sustain it and make it work for everybody. I hope that that's part of everybody's plan, and I guess if I'd spent more time and followed it, but to me it's such an important issue at the national level, the international level, and barely discussed in the campaign. So I think it's something that I think we should watch with the new government to see what direction they go. I might add that you know, I'm a tremendous proponent of recycling, and I think Saskatchewan and Alberta could teach us some lessons on those issues.
Now, from Keystone Agricultural Producers' perspective, obviously a primarily agricultural and rural focus, what were some of your top priorities that you wanted to see come up from the parties?
Well, we did. It was on the environment side. They did, the Conservatives did announce that they supported ALICE, Alternate Land Use Service Program, if elected, and that's been a long time coming. And Ian Wishart was very instrumental in bringing it to the province and introducing it to CAP. Actually, brought it through CAP. So it was good to see that one, I would say, as far as priorities. The other one that the Liberals suggested they would do was take the $5,000 school tax cap off, or the rebate off, so take that ceiling out.
Yes.
So that was probably the two biggest ones that I saw as far as coups is that we were promised, but we'll see where they are. And of course, the infrastructure one, that one, and the taxes, I'm sure we'll get into. I'll let Chris get into the rest of it, the other promises.
Now, I don't want to steal too much of your thunder here, Chris, but I'm assuming that infrastructure might have had something to do with AMM's priorities?
Absolutely. And, you know, you saw AMM put forward the Fair Share, Fair Say campaign during the lead up to the election, as well as during the election. It was really saying that infrastructure is a top priority for municipalities, and when municipalities have 60% of the public infrastructure and yet only have 8 cents of every tax dollar to get that job done, it is just not feasible. And so we were really pleased to have every party come out with their plan about how they're going to give us our fair say and also our fair share. Every party had a media conference in regards to that. And so we were really pleased that that was something front and center. And the evidence is really with the last poll that came out. The last poll talked about which is the most important. And normally we always think that education and health are important, and of course they are, and they're going to be top of mind. But actually, infrastructure is top of mind. So I think municipalities can be encouraged by that. The public has been supporting that, and I think all parties heard that over the last number of months.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and we're webcasting live. Pembina Valley Online, discover westman.com, Steinbach Online, and portageonline.com. And now it's time to head to the field as we check in with our first field report from Southern Manitoba.
You're listening in 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm at Progressive Conservative Party headquarters at Canada Inn's Polo Park in Winnipeg. And why don't we call this the calm before the storm? Polls closed a short while ago, and so far mostly media here as we anticipate the Conservative candidates and, of course, anticipate the results in this, the 41st general election. Of course, the Conservatives will be looking to better their performance from 2011 when they took 19 seats in what was a fourth consecutive NDP majority. Reporting at PC Party headquarters in Winnipeg, I'm Shannon Dewick.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
About 10 minutes after 8 o'clock here on election night in Manitoba, and obviously a bit of a scene setter this evening from Shannon Dewick, reporting from Progressive Conservative headquarters in Winnipeg. Always funny to mention that most of the folks there are media when you're at this point in the stage. But let's talk a little bit about this idea of what I'll say the kids call a killer app, something that really gets them engaged on their phones and their tablets and whatnot. Do any of you feel that any of the four major parties frankly had an announcement that completely caught the attention of voters? And Dan, how about we start with you?
It was on the infrastructure, and as soon as we changed the word to digital, that was for us at Keystone. I got more calls over that and lots of media pickup on that. That, you know what, you're right. We don't have good cell phone infrastructure or even like internet service in Manitoba, and it's kind of a dual role. Like there's portions where the feds got to step in with the CRTC and do that kind of review, but there is a role for the province to have an overall plan of how it's going to communicate. And there's lots of areas in this province that we don't have good enough communications, even for safety, public safety. When first responders go into certain parts of the province, they do not have good cell phone service. So that was the one for us that soon as if they mentioned anything about cell phone service, everybody was all over them for it. But I don't know, no one really promised anything with it, but that was the one that I would say that got people the most engaged, especially on Twitter, especially on media, and that everybody wanted to talk about it, but it didn't seem like the parties picked up on it too much.
How about you, Merv? Was there something that really struck a chord with you that you thought, hey, this might be something that really sways someone to vote for this party?
Well, it is interesting when you talk about the internet, spending a lot of time in the north, no services. And we expect people to compete, to get higher education and higher levels of service. And when they can't make access to even that type of information, I've traveled in third world countries that have had better cell service and better internet service than most of northern Canada. And even southwestern Manitoba, you go into the Wascada oil fields. Mm-hmm. A lot of people working there, and you couldn't make a long distance call with your cell phone. And that's very frustrating. I think it's something that could be done nationally and provincially, and I think it has to be done. I think if you're going to give people a fair chance, you got to give them access to the information.
How about you, Chris? Anything that you thought really might have engaged the voters?
Well, I think when it comes down to our people that are our municipal people, what really they heard it when they heard infrastructure, they were excited. But I think also another topic that was present, highly present, whenever I had a discussion with our members, is that when it comes down to reducing red tape, reducing regulation, or reviewing regulation, I think that was something they really appreciated hearing. And so I know we specifically got a the Conservatives did announce very specifically in regards to the Red Tape Commission that they want to initiate, and I think there was a lot of agreement among our members that something needs to be done, that we re-examine rules and regulations that are out there. There's very good reasons to have them, but there's also very good reasons to review them from time to time. So I think that was something that our members really appreciated.
Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on some of the announcements that were made by the parties. Obviously, the Liberals came out with their 1% PST pitch dedicated to infrastructure. We heard from the PCs talking about how they would roll back the PST to 7% in their first term. At least from my perspective as a voter and, of course, a host of the panel, I didn't feel that the NDP necessarily had something of that magnitude, something that would really grab someone's attention. Would you guys say that you would feel the same, or do you guys have differing opinions?
Well, I think when you've been a government for quite some time, 4 terms, you run on your record. And so when it came down to what we heard from the NDP, they said they said you saw how we worked over the last number of years. We're going to do more of the same. and they tried to spin it in a positive way. So it's different running after being in government for 4 terms than it is proposing a new government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I'd echo the same thoughts. It gets tiring. Like whether it's 14 or 16 years.
Yeah, 16
You
years.
know, it's pretty hard to renew yourself, and especially being the leader for that many years and having all what happened in the background to them. They were pretty beat up before they even hit the start line. So, there's some things they've done in the past that whatever they did them for different reasons and that, and we were living that reality. But we'll see what happens. The voters are going to have the final say at the end of the day. That's for sure.
Yeah, Merv, what do you think?
I think the fact that, and I did hear a lot in the media and read a lot, when Mr. Pallister was pounding that 1% increase, and everybody said, give it up, give it up. But it does resonate, and it stays in people's minds. And, what you decide to do with it or how you decide to deal with it isn't even relevant after that. The point is you did it, you said you weren't going to, and the doubt is always left in people's minds that it could happen again. And I think Brian played on that to a great degree. And it's everybody saying, what are you going to do? How are you going to find 1%? 1%. I think we could all find 1% pretty easy if we just looked. So I don't see it being a big challenge. I actually thought the number might be higher in the sense of what he could bring in savings.
We're coming up to about 17 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're listening to Decision 2016, and the first results are starting to come in very early, albeit across southern Manitoba and beyond. Currently, courtesy of electionsmanitoba.ca, we have the PC Party leading in 4 ridings, the NDP in 3, and the Green Party, in fact, in 1 at this time. The Liberals are not notched on the board at this time. A couple of, again, we're talking very early results. Like we were talking 23, 50, 75 votes per riding. So these are very, very early results. Some interesting things that are coming in so far. We have Arthur Verdon being led right now by an NDP candidate. We also have Midland being led by an NDP candidate. But again, we're talking 1 poll, a couple of dozen votes. Still very early.
I can remember watching the polls come in, and you could almost declare where the votes were coming from. In
Based on what
fact,
you're seeing.
one of my campaign managers refused to put the numbers up until we started showing that we had a lead. So it was always a little demoralizing if you got out of the blocks a little bit slow.
Well, I think very clearly you need to understand, and most people do, that these ridings are diverse ridings.
Yes,
and,
they are. Yes.
And one side is not necessarily like another, and especially in the rural parts of Manitoba, these ridings are thousands of kilometers, and communities aren't the same. So depending who phones their information in first, that's who gets the news.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was just thinking about the 1%, the cuts that they were talking, like you're bringing that back down to 7%. Before that, the election, I think 2011, we were already recognizing that our infrastructure and our physical infrastructure in Manitoba was starting to degrade quite quickly, especially in the oil patch. It was just on fire at that point in time. The whole problem with the infrastructure is we're behind. They're talking $10 billion in behind in infrastructure that is needs to be caught up. We got a deficit in infrastructure spending. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. I don't know how we get around that one. And so we've laid it out at CAP as hopefully they would prioritize. Like we realize that Manitoba is a big province, but maybe in 2016 we need a different approach. Like maybe those roads need to be interconnected, but in a systematic way, in a modern way. We haven't really re-looked at our infrastructure and how we transport goods around in the province. And I think that needs to be really taken a look at and say, okay, well, if we had a $10 billion deficit, how do we at least get back halfway and do it in a responsible way? And I think that was the key thing that was missing in all these promises. Even when they did increase the tax, they really didn't have a plan. Like it wasn't well, at least expressed anyways, that people could understand it.
We're coming up to 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and it's time to head back out to the field once again.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
Votes are still being counted in the 2016 Manitoba provincial election. Polls closed at 8 o'clock, and Elections Manitoba is now tabulating the results. We'll be keeping an eye on the Portage La Prairie, Agassiz, Lakeside, and Interlake polling stations throughout the night. You can also follow our election coverage at portageonline.com. From the Portage La Prairie newsroom, I'm Brendan Harris.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
And you're back live with Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network and webcasting throughout southern Manitoba on Pembina Valley Online. Discover westman.com, Steinbach Online, and portageonline.com. Well, to pour in here courtesy of Elections Manitoba, and right now the PCs are leading in 14 ridings, the NDP in 5, and the Green Party in fact in 2 ridings, and the Liberals just seconds ago notched their first couple of ridings. They're the leading in at this time, so things are starting to come in, and I think at this point in time, gentlemen, we can maybe talk about how a lot of people expected this evening to go, and at least at this point in time, it does seem to show that Manitobans are looking for some change. Again, a lot of these PC ridings are in traditional PC strongholds in southern Manitoba outside the city of Winnipeg. And Chris, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, you know, when you look back a number of weeks, 6 weeks probably at the start of the election, I think there was an expectation it to be interesting, especially between who would be the official opposition, if anything else, was a lot of the discussion. Would it be the Liberals? Would it be the NDP? We did see a campaign start out strong, I think, with the Liberals. I think starting back at that AMM debate back in November, which I think there was a lot of eyebrows that were being raised, where they said, hey, this is interesting. We need to hear more. But as time went on, obviously things evolved, and so we saw it quite clearly that there were basically 2 options for Manitobans, and over the last couple of weeks, things really solidified for the NDP and for the Conservatives.
Yeah, how about you, Dan? Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I echo the same thing. Chris and I get along a lot great here tonight. That was it was you know, the PCs played a solid campaign. It was very, you know, scripted. They knew where they were going for. It was theirs to lose. I wouldn't call it yet quite tonight, but that whole, like, you know, the NDP and the Liberals, that struggle back and forth, who's going to take who from who at the end of the night, that'll be pretty interesting. But I think it was looking a lot better for the Liberals at the very beginning of this. People were wanting to know if it was a decent option, but I think there was some good debates. I do watch those quite a bit, and that's when you'll get the real goods on the candidates, and they get surprised or get off script a little bit, and there was some good debates, and I think that's where you really get your true taste of what they're going to do when they get into the legislature. So,
yeah, how about you, Murph?
Well, I think you know, it started off. I think everybody recognized rural Manitoba was going to vote progressive conservative. How would the city of Winnipeg do? And you know, that's always been the wild card. It's been a predictable position for the NDP to carry, and you know, I think they put a lot of their resources and efforts into that race. And again, I think it reflects more just the desire for change. Once that's implanted in people's minds, something dramatic has to happen to make it change, and I don't think that happened in this campaign. I think it started out quiet for the Conservatives, and they maintained that throughout the campaign, kept their heads down, did their jobs, and it's probably reflecting in some of the numbers tonight.
One riding we will be keeping an eye on tonight is the riding of Brandon East in the city of Brandon. That, frankly, has been the only bastion of NDP support from a voter perspective since 1999. Of course, Drew Caldwell has been holding that seat for a very long period of time. As it stands right now, with 2 out of 56 polls reported, Len Iselson is currently in the lead in that riding, with Drew Caldwell in second and the Liberal candidate in third. Merv, maybe let's start with you as someone who comes from the political background, former MLA. What would it say to you if we do see that PC-NDP flip in that Brandon East riding, which really is that last outpost of hope outside of Winnipeg for the NDP?
I still think it's going to be a very tough challenge to do that. Drew Caldwell has, I think, done a good job of representing that area. He's brought a lot of things to Brandon. He certainly I think has done well to represent the area. Again, I think it's the change. I think people are recognizing that the government is going to change, and perhaps continued success will be better with the government party of the day. I in '99 I remember the Orange Wave. Goudoure's government was starting to leach out into rural Manitoba, and we felt that there, and I'm sure Drew has felt it. What we saw was not so much a loss of votes; it was votes didn't show up, and we saw 1,000, 1,200 less votes on our side of the ledger. And I think that's maybe what might be occurring or will occur tonight in Brandon East as well.
25 minutes after 8 o'clock, you're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and it's time to head out to our reporters in the field one more time.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
Good evening, I'm Corey Canute here at Canadians Polo Park at the PC headquarters. PC supporters have started arriving here, and it looks like everyone is ready for a party. The polls closed about 30 minutes ago. Results should start coming in any time now. In Emerson, PC's Cliff Graydon is looking to retain his seat against Liberal Lauren Brawl and the NDP's Alana Jones. In Midland, the PC's Blaine Peterson is looking to hold on to his seat against Liberal Julia Sisler, NDP Jacqueline Thoreau, and the Green Party's Stacey O'Neill. In Morden Winkler, PC candidate Cameron Friesen is looking to retain his seat against Liberal Benjamin Bodden, the NDP's Elizabeth Lynch, and the Green Party's Mike Yurachuk. And in Morris, the PC's Shannon Martin is looking to hang on to his seat against Liberal John Falk and the NDP's Muhammad Ali. The PCs will try to defeat the NDP government, who have been in power since 1999. I'll be back in about 45 minutes with another update from Canadians Polo Park, the PC party headquarters. For Golden West Radio, I'm Corey Canute.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
27 minutes after 8 o'clock, you're listening to Decision 2016, and a quick update here from a provincial perspective. Currently, the PCs are leading in 28 constituencies, the NDP in 5 only, the Green Party in 2, and the Liberals in 2. And Golden West Radio and Decision 2016 are now ready to declare that Blaine Peterson has been elected in the constituency of Midland, and Kelvin Gertzen in the constituency of Steinbach. And I guess let's start with you, Chris, obviously from Steinbach. I'm thinking you're not too surprised that Kelvin Gertzen will be back representing you.
Well, as many people say that all you need is the name Gertzen and you get elected, but you need more than that. Calvin has been a very good representative of the city and the surrounding area. He is popular. He works very hard. There's no reason why he shouldn't have been reelected, and I think he's actually played an important role with the government, or with the opposition, and I think he'll play an important role with the government as well.
We're coming up to our first local newscast here at about 8:30, but I wanted to give our last word before we break away for that to Dan, and just talk a little bit briefly about if we do see what is more than likely going to transpire here in a PC majority, what do you think in broad strokes that's going to mean for the Manitoba legislature being a friend to agriculture? Because let's be honest, there has been a little bit of animosity in the past between the NDP government and agriculture as a whole.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, there'll have to be, maybe there'll be a balance. I think it brought back into the legislature, and I was certainly looking forward to that. And the NDP, it was interesting. We were talking about rules. Always thought that the Conservatives would be in there, but if you go north, like in Dauphin area, Swan River, and even Interlake area, and those are very rural ridings. That's all orange, or was all orange for a long time. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens to our like the Costitians, Navashnikovs, things like that up there, like because that's normally very strong NDP riding place. But we'll see what happens. A lot of these rural folks do come from our rural ridings, so we'll see what happens. I guess after tonight.
All right, so it's about 8:30 here on Tuesday night, provincial election evening. You're listening to Decision 2016, and at this point in time, we're going to break away to our local newsrooms for local provincial election updates.
This is CFAM News.
Good evening, I'm Candace Dirksen. The campaigning has ended and the polls have closed in the 41st Manitoba general election. Manitobans will decide today which party will form the next provincial government. With more on that story, here's reporter Dean Penner.
Manitoba's NDP has enjoyed a 16-year run in power, and Premier Greg Selinger stated that this election was about clear policy choices that will make a difference for the future of Manitoba. However, polls heading into the campaign suggested the party was on the ropes. The New Democrats faced public backlash over a 2013 decision to raise the provincial sales tax, and Selinger barely survived an internal challenge to his leadership last year. Meanwhile, Progressive Conservative leader Brian Pallister said this campaign was about getting a handle on a freight train of spending increases that the NDP was steering. He reminded voters about his party's promise to roll back the sales tax by 1 point if it forms government, and suggested the $300 million the tax brings in could be recouped by cutting government waste. The NDP continually accused the Tory leader of planning to cut government services and privatize parts of the healthcare system. Not to be overlooked in this election is the Liberal Party under the leadership of Rana Bakari, a lawyer who has worked to raise the Liberal profile since taking over as leader in 2013. Bakari campaigned on the slogan of meaningful change for issues such as the economy, healthcare, and in reducing poverty. The Liberals had high expectations going into this election based on voter dissatisfaction with the NDP. However, the Liberals hit some major snags along the way after Elections Manitoba rejected 5 of their candidates. As a result, the Liberals did not have a full slate of candidates for the first time since 1999. For Golden West Radio, I'm Dean Penner.
The ridings that we'll be watching closely this evening include Morden Winkler, Emerson, Midland, and Morris. In Morden Winkler, incumbent Tory MLA Cameron Friesen is up against Benjamin Bodden of the Liberals, Mike Urachuk of the Green Party, and NDP candidate Elizabeth Lynch. In Emerson, Liberal Lauren Brawl and NDP candidate Alana Jones are up against PC incumbent Cliff Graydon, who is seeking a 3rd term in office. Tory MLA Shannon Martin, in his first ever election, will try to hold on to his seat against Liberal John Falk and NDP candidate Mohammed Ali. In Midland, Julia Sisler of the Liberal Party, Jacqueline Thoreau of the NDP, and Green Party candidate Stacey O'Neill are trying to unseat incumbent Tory MLA Blaine Peterson. For up-to-date election results, visit PembinaValleyOnline.com. Golden West's election night coverage continues now. I'm Candace Dirksen.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Hosting tonight's provincial election roundtable is Chris Sumner.
And welcome back to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network and web streaming across southern Manitoba on Pembina Valley Online, discoverwestman.com, Steinbach Online, and portageonline.com. And at this point in time, Decision 2016 and the Golden West Radio Network is ready to declare a PC majority. A PC majority in the 2016 provincial election. At this point in time, the PCs are leading in 31 ridings, the NDP in 9, the Liberals 2, and the Greens in 2 at this time. By the way, the Green ridings are both in the city of Winnipeg in the core area. So, gentlemen, we're going to work under this assumption unless something changes dramatically here in the next 25 to 30 minutes or so. And Chris, how about we begin with you going into what looks like to be a PC majority? What will that mean for AMM?
Well, I think municipalities had a very good rapport with many of the MLAs in the current caucus of the Conservative Party, but I think we're going to have a lot of new MLAs, and so we're going to have to make sure that we tell them our municipal story. We're going to make sure that they understand the challenges that municipalities face when we have 60% of the public infrastructure, and yet only 8 cents of every tax dollar. And so I think all in all, we had a good rapport with the leader's office and with the current MLA. So I think we look forward to building that relationship in the coming months.
How about we talk to you, Merv? Just get your thoughts. Obviously, in the past, you have clearly flown the Tory blue flag, so I'm thinking that this must bring a bit of a smile to your face that Brian Pallister will be leading the Progressive Conservatives in the Manitoba legislature.
I'm actually happy for Brian. I think he'll make a great premier of the province. A lot of people have said along the way probably the biggest challenge is to get him to that position. Once he's there, I think he'll do a great job. I think the fact that they've got a strong rural caucus now with a lot of new people added from the city of Winnipeg, you'll see a real willingness for a new government to want to reach out to the communities and actually hear what they have to say and try and resolve some of the issues that they bring forward. So I think it's a positive new day, and look forward to seeing the future.
All right. How about you, Dan? Let's talk a little bit about what the CAP perspective is on a PC majority in the Manitoba legislature.
And we've been quite fortunate when you have our advocacy role that we do. We work with all the parties and try to keep that balance and that lines of communications open. And the new candidates that are going to be in the House right now is actually pretty exciting, because that brings in new ideas, and that actually it's a renewal for the whole party in general. So not only are they elected, you've got an opportunity to kind of get that different perspective into policy. So it's pretty exciting time as far as, and meanwhile we'll have that balance of the rural caucuses and agriculture influence there. Like Pallister himself is from rural Manitoba, so that's a bonus right there. Well, the majority of his candidates are, everything outside of Winnipeg is considered rural in Manitoba, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just an interesting point that we've been keeping an eye on here is at last perspective, or the last time we checked, Greg Selinger was leading just barely in his riding. Also, Brian Pallister has won, it appears, his riding, Fort White, I believe it is, in the city of Winnipeg. Just looking right now, Rana Bokhari, leader of the Liberal Party in Fort Rouge, none of their polls are reporting yet, but I wanted to get your guys' perspective on the new leader. Came into this not that long before the election started. And Merv, I guess let's start with you as a political vet. What was your impression of her in her first go-around with the provincial election?
I've had the opportunity to meet Rana and have some discussion, and I find her she's engaging, she's interested. I offered some advice earlier in her career as the leader and suggested that she should enter into a by-election if she had a chance. It prepares you a little more for that on-the-spot interview, that mic in your face, and I think she was a little nervous with that and wasn't as comfortable, and I even think a little bit maybe you have to know your message and you have to stay on that message, and I think she was easily taken off her message, and I think that's hurt her in the campaign. It showed her perhaps as weak or not organized, and that's something you can't do in a campaign when you're the leader. You've got to be the leader every minute of the day, and I think it hurt her, and probably hurt her in her team, but nonetheless, I think she brought a brand new perspective, and I enjoyed a lot of her comments.
Okay. How about you, Dan, and your thoughts on how Rana conducted herself, and ultimately it looks like won't be forming the official opposition?
When the Liberal Party was setting policy, and all these parties did that probably a couple of years ago, throughout different months, but we had the opportunity to go in and talk about agriculture policy and what should be if they were forming policy. Got to have a good to look at her then and just see what the party was going to do and how she was going to function around that. From that point on, it looked pretty positive. I have to say the party policies were starting to line up for agriculture pretty good. She's from a farm. She was born and raised on a farm actually in Anola, I think is where her farm was. So, again, that influence from the rural areas was really positive to see. And I think the party platforms was pretty solid for agriculture. But again, we just it was, I think, just inexperience, and it's too bad. Definitely a different perspective, though. She tried to run it at high, like keep that level of respect to there, and that's especially at that AMM when she was really trying to say, look, I don't want to offend anybody, but you guys are lying here, but it was, but of course, just lost control at the end there. So
yeah, how about you, Chris?
I think at that AMM debate was her highest point in the election. She did a very good job there. She surprised a lot of people, but as it moved, it changed and evolved, and that was I think partly a reflection of experience, but it was also partly a reflection of the support that she had around around her. She needs, like any politician, we need people supporting us, the staff, and so on. And I'm not sure if she had that to the extent that was needed to run a full provincial campaign. But we'll see how things shape up for her tonight.
Coming up to 20 minutes away from 9 o'clock on Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and it's time to head out to southwestern Manitoba for our first field report from that neck of the woods.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm Barry Lamb in the CJRB newsroom. Projections are a progressive conservative majority government. Right now, the Tories are leading in 34 constituencies, the NDP in 12, the Liberals in 2, and the Green Party in 1. Checking Brandon East constituency, PC candidate Len Eastleson has 204 votes. Drew Caldwell, the incumbent, has 78. Liberal Vanessa Hamilton with 28. Moving on to Arthur Verdon. The incumbent there is Doyle Panuke. Right now he has a total of 525 votes. Frank Goodon with the Manitoba Party is second with 124. And New Democrat Lauren Topolniski is next with a total of 68 votes. And checking Sprucewoods constituency, the incumbent there is the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba. He looks to be comfortable this evening with 200 votes. In second, Manitoba Party Malcolm McKellar with 27. New Democrats are third, tied with the Liberals, actually, both with 20 votes. The New Democrat candidate there is Amanda Schmelik, and for the Liberals, it is Jaron Hart. And again, at this point, projections, a progressive conservative majority government will lead the way in the province of Manitoba. From the CJRB newsroom in Boissevain, I'm Barry Lamb. Back to Decision 2016.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
And if you're just joining us tonight on Decision 2016, Golden West Radio, and Decision 2016 projecting a PC majority government for the province of Manitoba, currently leading in 39 constituencies, the NDP leading in 12, the Liberals in 2, and the Green Party in 1. Now, one thing we were going to keep our eyes on tonight until the flood of blue started to come in about 15 minutes ago was whether some of these northern ridings were going to flip from traditional NDP roots to progressive conservative. And in fact, at this stage of the game, we are seeing that in the riding of Dauphin. We are seeing a PC leading there. Swan River was held by Ron Kostyshin. Currently, Rick Wochuk is leading that riding. And in the PAW as well, Amanda Laughlin had held that seat, currently being led by the PC Doug Lofstad. So how about we start with Chris and just get your thoughts on what we're seeing on some of these party flips?
Well, I think what you see is you see credible candidates from both the NDP and the Conservatives in those constituencies, and what you end up with, you have a tide going, and normally that tide doesn't reach that western portion of the province and northern area, but I think the tide is significant enough that you see it actually flipping over. So this is fairly rare to see the PAW and Dauphin and Swan River to really move in that direction.
Yeah, how about you, Dan? What are you thinking?
I think it's the same thing. They everybody sensed there was distrust right through the whole party, and I think that leadership election really did hurt the party faithful and the core, I'll call it. And I think you're just seeing the results of that. That was really questioning where the party was headed with the existing leader that was in place there. That was such a divisive vote in itself. Anytime you got a 51, 52 going on, it's, we've all experienced those kind of things. Those are hard on all types of organizations, to say the least.
Merv, how about you, what you're seeing with some of these party flips?
It's interesting. I think the fact that Brian Pallister chose to go to the PAW, Flin Flon, into the northern part of the Churchill riding indicated that they had been doing some polling and obviously enough interest to take the journey up there. Most leaders, I suspect, spent their time in Winnipeg, and he saw to go up there. I think he saw a real opportunity, and the numbers are starting to. The spread is becoming bigger, and I can tell you, as a candidate watching polls, you start out with a small lead or you're behind, and all of a sudden, if it's one or two or three polls that start to pile on one way or the other, you start to sense it, and I'm sure Brandon East, obviously, and the northern ridings, and that creeping further and further and further away, you keep thinking, well, the next poll is going to turn it, and unfortunately, history says that it doesn't, and be a very frustrating night.
And one thing I would like to point out about the northern vote too is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure the PC party was the only party to release a fairly detailed northern strategy for this election. It was called Yes North, and I'm not sure if the other parties did the same, and I'm sure that must have spoke to some of these ridings as well. Of course, we're not talking like Dauphin is north, but there were certainly some elements there that I think that came into play. You bring up this idea of Brandon East once again, and I thought we would just have a look-see here to just see where Drew, the incumbent, is at right now. And currently, as we click away here, we have Len Islifson. He is leading with the PC party right now, 3 of 56 polls and 66% of the vote. Drew Caldwell in second at 25%. Now, we're going to get into this, I think, a little bit more further, but I want to start this now before we head back out to the field once again, and that's the idea of a hangover from the Rebel 5, if you will, the leadership election that took place with the NDP party. Chris, how about we start with you? Was that something that came into play for the NDP going into this election?
Well, I think it solidified the challenges that Greg Selinger already had. Not only if you have a united party and you've had some unpopular policies, you're going to have a challenge in an election. And then to have part of your own party saying, you know what, we don't have confidence in you anymore, I think is really damaging. And that stuck, I think, extensively over the last year.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's hard to come back from those kind of divisive votes. And the deals that were made before that and all during that campaigning, not only do they have their campaigning in public right now, but when they're doing a leadership race in a party itself, it's got to be very united going out to the public, and that is definitely a hangover. At least in my observation anyways, I would say that's hurting them probably better than helping them, that's for sure.
Yeah, how about you, Murph?
Definitely, it undermined him. It undermined his authority. You're going to lead. You're going to have to make friends and enemies inside caucus. It's how you deal with them when you have those issues. And, you know, we saw candidates speak out against Mr. Selinger during the campaign. You just can't have that. And if you're not afraid or a little bit afraid, you don't have control. And I think that's what's happened. And I think ministers, I think MLAs, and I think even the party executive challenged that leadership, and he never did regain it.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. It's time to head back out into the field and see about the races that matter the most to you.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
Here in Portage La Prairie, Progressive Conservative Ian Wishart's leading with 614, Liberal Stephen Prince has 189, and the NDP's Alex McDonald has 109. In the Lakeside constituency, Progressive Conservative Ralph Eichler has 440, while the NDP's Matt Osman has 98. And in the Interlake, Progressive Conservative Derek Johnson leads with 228, Liberal Jamal Abbas has 130, and the NDP's Tom Novakshinoff has 103. From the Portage La Prairie News Center, I'm Brendan Harris.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
12 minutes away from 9 o'clock, and you're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. And if you are just joining us, Golden West Radio is announcing, projecting, if you will, a PC majority government. Currently, the PCs are leading in 38 constituencies, the NDP in 3, the Liberals 2, and the Green Party in 1. Also, wanted to update you on some of the local ridings that we are keeping an eye on at this time. And essentially outside the city of Winnipeg, unless you're in the far north of Manitoba, it is a blue tide. And I think for the most part that really has not come as a surprise to the four fellows that are around the table this evening. And how about we flip the script here a little bit and talk a little bit more about the NDP, because obviously they are being swept out here in fairly convincing fashion. And Dan, how about we start with you? What did the NDP have to do here to have any chance of maintaining even a minority government, let alone a majority?
Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And they had to get the confidence, like they were legitimately had new ideas, and we were talking about this earlier about after 16 years, you start running people. There's too much of a legacy there. I call it baggage. Like you just how do you okay, oh, we made a mistake here, or we did this thing good. They couldn't even point to a lot of things that worked well for them in recent memory. And I think compound that with piling on debt and infrastructure spending or deficits, and just there's everything from child care services, health care services. There's taxes going up. I mean, they had a colossal problem on their hands, and I think that's what you're seeing there. But as far as I think they needed to get their party together, and that was they were behind before they even started. I in my opinion, anyways, they had a big thing to overcome.
So I'm thinking that the PST increase here had to have come into play at some point, and would have been almost insurmountable, I think, in some voters' minds. Chris, what do you think?
Well, obviously, I think that PST raise was it solidified the feelings about a government long in the tooth. When you're in government for 4 terms, 16 years, you've said no to many people, and you've had many people who wished for something and had hope and may not have as much hope. And so as the longer you are in government, the harder it is to win re-election. And I think for them to have really pulled this off, you would have had to have Pallister make some serious errors. You would have had to possibly had a new leader. There are a number of combinations that might have worked, but a 4th term or a 5th term, very difficult.
Yeah, how about you, Merv? Was there anything that Greg Selinger and the NDP electoral machine could have done to change tonight's results?
I think it's very tough, as has already been said, when you're into your 4th election. Leadership is, we've talked a lot about that tonight and how important it is. Sometimes leadership has to understand or recognize when it's time to step aside, too. And I think the party tried to tell Premier Selinger that, and he thought differently. But I think they ran him as the centerpiece of the entire campaign. So obviously he had influence in those decisions and where it was going to go. And I'm sure at the end of the night he'll take full responsibility.
Well, and let's talk about this idea of leadership, because clearly, at least on the NDP side, there's going to be a lot of discussion, and I think immediately, perhaps even tonight, I'm thinking you may see some ranks breaking with how clearly this has been just a landslide.
And I just thought of this. We were commenting on Bakari's performance and how the expectations were so high. Really, there's just as much of this bad things have happened to the NDP leadership as well, and how that's all unfolded as well. For an experienced party, that was pretty bad. Like that, what happened here is not a very good, positive image for a long in the tooth, very experienced party. So things can happen in elections that, they just happen. So.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Well, I think if you barely have your party behind you going into an election and you lose it, and you're not going to have that party behind you moving forward. And so it's going to be a tough evening for Premier Selinger. Sometimes you almost, if you lose an election like this and there's going to be difficulties, you almost want to wish that you lose your own riding to make it easier, but I'm not sure what's going to be happening here tonight in St. Boniface.
Yeah, and speaking of that riding, currently Greg Selinger is leading in St. Boniface with 14 of 56 polls reporting 38% of the vote, and the PC candidate in St. Boniface currently in second place with 26% of the vote. And I tongue-in-cheek throughout this idea of maybe seeing some break in the ranks in the NDP tonight regarding some of the comments we may see. Do you think that they will try to maintain a unified front for the most part, or do you see some of the cracks showing through in some of the comments we may hear in the media tonight with what we're seeing? Because I think even in the wildest dreams of the NDP, they didn't think this was going to happen. But again, that's just my opinion. Merv, how about we start with you?
I think they'd be wise if they didn't say anything. Obviously, politics is the business where you say something and then regret it 10 seconds later. And when you're suffering a loss and a fairly humiliating loss, you're better, I think, to absorb it, think about it, and make your comments the next day when you've had a chance to think it over. It's, I was part of a losing government in '99, and it is devastating because even though you won, you lost. And it's a team game, and if your team doesn't win, the victory is far less sweet. So I would encourage them to regroup, and obviously there's going to be a lot of discussion going forward, and I suspect it won't happen real quick.
How about we talk about this idea of whether we're seeing votes for the Progressive Conservative Party, or are we seeing what some people suggested happened in the federal election, where we had maybe a bit of a protest vote, where it wasn't necessarily votes for a particular party, it was votes against the party that was in power. Dan, maybe some thoughts from you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that going on. People, for whatever reason, there was talk about declining your vote more so in this. I just heard on the radio this morning, there were more than any other election, that this has been a topic, a pretty high manner in the last couple of days here. Like, no one could stomach anybody that was running in their ridings or the leaders, and it'll be interesting to see how many people actually declined in this election as well, because they do register those, and that sends a pretty clear signal to the parties, wherever they're standing, to those candidates at the end of the day. Even if they did get elected, but they have a higher decline rate, that's something to be watching, because then that means they're not reaching out to the people that actually could have voted them in or voted for somebody. So that'll be an interesting number I'm kind of watching for.
You mentioned the number of declined votes. I actually have a number right now, courtesy of Elections Manitoba. Of the almost 55,000 votes that have been counted up to this point, 506 were declined.
Oh, wow.
So
1%.
Yeah, 1%, which when you think about it, that's fairly significant. With the results we're seeing tonight, it wouldn't have swayed the ticker either way.
Yeah.
But 1% of people actually going to a poll to saying, I don't like anybody. That's saying something. Chris, what are your thoughts on whether we're seeing votes for or if we're seeing votes against in what we're seeing tonight?
Well, there is an old saying that parties don't win elections, governments lose them, and I'm not saying that that's the case here tonight, but I think there was people were tired after that many terms in government, and I think Pallister ran a very clean campaign, or a very very disciplined campaign, and I think it showed in the results in the polls leading up to it, and then of course this large majority we see here tonight.
And just to update folks that are joining us this evening for Decision 2016 across the Golden West Radio Network, we are calling a PC majority government here as we head forward throughout the evening, and it does appear that essentially all of the incumbent PC candidates outside the city of Winnipeg will be returning to the legislature. So we're talking Arthur Verdon, Spruce Woods, Midland, Morden Winkler, Emerson, Lavarandre, as well as Steinbach. And I'm thinking for you fellows here, when we look south of the Trans-Canada Highway, surprised or not that we're seeing a blue wave go back? Murph, we'll start with you.
Absolutely not. Having drove that road number 2 and number 3 a lot in the last month or so, no competition. There was no if you even look at the ballots, in a lot of cases there's one other person on the ballot. So I think that reflects poorly on democracy to some degree, and reflects poorly on the other parties for not finding a candidate or representing or presenting a candidate. I think it's unfortunate when people don't have a choice. And you talked earlier about do they vote for or against. I think it's a combination of both, but I think the NDP government, as was said earlier, I think when they had the rebellion within, it was ingrained in the public's mind that it was no longer going to be a Sellinger government.
All right, how about you, Dan, and what we're seeing south of the Trans-Canada tonight?
Yeah, I never thought of that. Wait, Murph, it doesn't offer anybody any much choice when you have. And I made the comment this morning. We're at Spruce Woods, Cliff Cullen's I guess candidate coming back, but there was a Liberal person from out of the city of Winnipeg and a Manitoba party. Mm-hmm. That was it. So you didn't really have much of a choice, and but yet the PCs, and especially in the southwestern part of or the southern part of the province, PCs have been there right through. And I think that's why people are saying, no, if it's time for a change, we voted for you in the bad times, so we might as well go for the good times too. So that's their base. That's they'll stand beside them now in the legislature, which is good.
And just ahead of our 9 o'clock local news update here, Chris will give you the last word before 9 on what we're seeing south of the Trans-Canada.
Well, I think you've always seen a lot of Tory blue in that area. Dawson Trail, for example, is generally a fair weather constituency, and so that one you, of course, seeing turning from Ron Lemieux's riding NDP to the Conservatives. That tends to be exactly the case, whatever form that riding has taken over the years, that when whoever forms government takes those ridings. And again, when you look at Brandon East, that's pretty significant. And Minister Caldwell was our minister over the last year, and we enjoyed working with him. And on a personal note, we're disappointed for him, but at the same time, you could kind of see where this was going.
It's 9 o'clock on provincial election night. You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. It's time to break to our local newsrooms for our local election races.
This is CFAM News.
Good evening. I'm Candace Dirksen. Golden West Radio is predicting a progressive Conservative majority government in Manitoba, marking the end of a 17-year NDP government in the province. Currently, the Progressive Conservatives hold 39 seats. The NDP are at 13 and look to be forming the official opposition. The Liberals hold 3 seats and the Green Party has 1 seat. PC incumbent and party leader Brian Pallister has been re-elected in Fort White. Tory incumbent Blaine Peterson has been declared re-elected in Midland with 2,058 votes, beating out Julia Sisler of the Liberal Party, Jacqueline Thoreau of the NDP, and Green Party candidate Stacey O'Neill. PC Cliff Grayton has also been re-elected to a 3rd term in Emerson constituency, garnering 1,700 votes, surpassing Liberal Lauren Brawl and NDP candidate Alana Jones. PC incumbent Kelvin Gertzen has also been re-elected in Steinbach with 1,798 votes. Incumbent Tory MLA Shannon Martin, participating in his first provincial election, has been re-elected in Morris constituency with 666 votes, beating out Liberal John Falk and NDP candidate Mohammed Ali. We're still waiting for results in Morden Winkler constituency, where Tory incumbent Cameron Friesen is seeking another term as MLA. He's up against Benjamin Bodden of the Liberals, Mike Yurichuk of the Green Party, and NDP candidate Elizabeth Lynch. Golden West's election night coverage continues now with Decision 2016. I'm Candace Dirksen.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Hosting tonight's provincial election roundtable is Chris Sumner.
Shortly after 2 o'clock on the Golden West Radio Network, you are listening to Decision 2016 throughout southern Manitoba. Also webcasting tonight on PemmineValleyOnline.com. Discover Westman.com, PortageOnline.com, and SteinbachOnline.com. If you're just joining us this evening for Decision 2016, Golden West Radio is projecting a PC majority government. We are seeing some fairly dramatic and significant results here as we're starting to get a very large amount of those results in from polls throughout southern Manitoba. Currently, the PC party is leading in 39 ridings, the NDP in 14. The Liberals are back up to 2, and the Green Party is in 1 riding at this time. And we're just starting to receive word that it appears that former Liberal leader John Gerard is on track to lead or to win his riding. I believe that is in... off the top of my head.
River Heights.
River Heights. Thank you, Murph. And we are keeping an eye on current Liberal leader Rana Bokhari. The reason being is 13 of 58 polls there in Fort Rouge have, in fact, reported, and she is currently in 2nd place to Wab Canoe, who is the NDP candidate in that riding. No incumbents in Fort Rouge. That one would be a brand new elected official for that particular riding. As for other leaders that we're keeping an eye on, of course, Brian Pallister, who will be forming the next government and leading the province of Manitoba. He has been elected in Fort White. That, of course, is a riding in the city of Winnipeg. 62% of the vote, with more than half of the polls responding in Fort White. As for Greg Selinger, who was the former premier of the province of Manitoba, he is currently in first place in St. Boniface with just about half of the polls reporting, with 39%. The PC candidate in St. Boniface in second place with 26% of the vote. Clearly, we have a wave of blue that is going across southern Manitoba and, in fact, beyond. Earlier on in our broadcast, we were talking a little bit about the fact that we are seeing some of the northern ridings flip from NDP strongholds to now PC candidates. And at this point in time, we'll bring back our election roundtable guest this evening, Chris Gertzen, who is the president of Association of Manitoba Municipalities, Dan Mazer, president of Keystone Agricultural Producers, and Merv Tweed, former MP and MLA, MP in Brandon Souris and MLA for Turtle Mountain. So, guys, we've obviously talked a little bit about the progressive conservative majority government that is going to be sitting here shortly. It's very clear that the province was looking for change. I think what I'd like to touch on now is what you guys would like to see from Brian Pallister and the PC party as we get going here. We always hear in American politics the first 100 days and how really what can you get done in 100 days. But from a hypothetical sort of perspective, Chris, what would you like to see the PC party, our new provincial government, get going on sooner rather than later?
Well, in fact, we did see a press release come out that talked about the first 100 days of a potential conservative government here in Manitoba. And one of those things that was on the list and was clear on the list was a full discussion with Winnipeg and all municipalities. And so we really look forward to sitting down with the government and talking about the challenges that we have when it comes to infrastructure, the challenges that we have when it comes to regulation, and making sure that we simplify the world for both the provincial government and the municipal governments around the province. And so we look forward to sitting down and talking about what common priorities that we have going forward so that we can make a better Manitoba.
Okay, how about you, Dan? What would you like to see, I guess, specifically from a CAP perspective on what this PC government will do for you sooner rather than later?
And we've talked about the infrastructure, of course, and we've talked about red tape reduction. I think that's going to be, they don't know what kind of books they're walking into. So that'll, I think, will be a very eye-opening experience for the government, especially those new people, and trying to get those people up to speed on that. I think one thing we haven't talked on in today is the research and innovation side. Government always says we want to create an atmosphere. We want to be Bowman's talking about innovation of the North kind of thing, Silicon Valley of the North, and agriculture is actually one of the shining stars in that. We're at Farmers Edge. We did a press conference with Farmers Edge at Innovation Alley.
Yes.
And the Golden West nicely covered. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we were actually, I was blown away with the technology they're talking about. Wade Barnes did a presentation in there, and he says everybody in the valley, the real Silicon Valley, is talking about agriculture. We've got an opportunity here in Manitoba. There's no reason why these people have to leave Manitoba. They can come to Manitoba just like Air Canada was here. Like
yes.
The brains are here, and we have Farmers Edge to prove it. They're just one of many that are out there. So and that would help support our young and innovative farmers. And that if we're trying to, with this talk of climate change and adaptation, those are the farmers that they're going to need to innovate and need to adjust to a changing climate. So I think I would like to see some talk about that. It was mentioned before. We didn't see a lot of talk about the environment on this one. I don't know how this provincial government's going to deal with the national government, and that's coming at them this fall. So I think the greenhouse gas discussions, I'm very interested to see what this government's going to deal with it. Our provincial government, how they're going to line up with the Brad Walls, or if they're going to line up with the eastern parties, or maybe be in the middle and be the broker of them all. I don't know. I'll be kind of curious to see how that all unfolds.
So, Merv, obviously this will be the first time that Brian Pallister has held the role of premier. He's held the leader of the PC party for a period of time now. What would be the advice that you would give to Brian as he gets down to work here in his first 100 days? What are things that are going to be critical and crucial for him?
I think obviously naming his cabinet and putting his team in place as quickly as he possibly can. There's about a 5-day delay after the election for everything to clear, and So I suspect in the next 2 weeks he'll name his cabinet. I think the audit of the government affairs is going to be absolutely
It's going to be big.
integral to his decisions to go forward. He certainly has listed some of the priorities that he wants to move forward on very quickly, and I think it'll take, again, about a 10 to 2 week briefing period of ministers to get caught up to speed, but I suspect they'll have their marching orders long before that, and it'll just be a matter of implementing the plan. I think, what people want to see more than anything, at least the people I'm talking to, is some sort of a plan going forward financially. I think you can do a lot of things as government, and you can make things happen for different groups and different organizations, but if you don't present a plan that's sellable and understandable to them, they're going to be in the same situation. And I think there is a big mountain ahead of them, and I think Brian's history, his work, his professional career would indicate that he's got all the skills necessary to do that, and I think with a large majority, he's going to be able to move things as quickly as possible.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and it's time once again to head to the field and join our reporters covering the races that matter to you most.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm here at Canada Inns Polo Park, and it's smiles all around here as the PCs have been declared the new government here in Manitoba. I'm here with Morris MLA, recently re-elected Morris MLA Shannon Martin. Shannon, just your thoughts on the PC win here tonight.
You know what? The short comment I give is wow. And there is no other word for tonight. We all had our hopes and aspirations for this evening. Our goal was obviously, we needed to pick up 10 seats to form a slim majority government. But to see the results that are rolling in tonight, I mean, this isn't just, this is history. This is historic territory, not just for us, but for us as a political party, but for Manitobans. And I think we've been given a very clear mandate by the people of Manitoba. And more importantly, I think the NDP have had a clear repudiation of what they have brought, or wrought on Manitobans for the last 17 years. A clear rejection of their policies.
And your thoughts on picking up the seat in Morris again?
You know what? It's a by-election is very different than an election. It was thrilling to be part of that and to be part of an actual, a general election with all my colleagues and be part of that larger team. I'm excited to move from the opposition side to the government side. The opposition, I enjoyed it. It was a terrific 2 years. It was a great learning experience. Opposition plays a very important role in our parliamentary democracy. But I can't, I'll have to be honest, I'm not particularly sad leaving that side of the chamber over to the government side, which apparently is going to be a pretty crowded side by the way things are looking tonight.
And finally here, have you given any thought to what your role might be in the Pallister government?
Well, I'm pretty confident that'll be a government MLA in the Pallister government, but it's up to our leader to make those decisions. Whatever role that each of us are assigned, I have no doubt they'll be based on a whole number of factors, and wherever I can contribute to this, to us moving forward, to implement the plans and the ideas and promises we've committed, and to represent the citizens of Morris. That's my role.
Thanks, Shannon. And just wrapping things up here, I'll be back in about 20 minutes with another report here from Canada Inns Polo Park at the PC Party headquarters. For Golden West Radio, I'm Corey Canute.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
13 minutes after 9 o'clock on the Golden West Radio Network. You are listening to Decision 2016, and if you are just joining us, Golden West Radio projecting a progressive conservative majority government will form the next provincial government in the province of Manitoba. At this time, the PCs leading or elected in 40 constituencies, the NDP leading in 15, the Liberals in 2, and the Green Party at none. Now, we touched on it just before we broke away to hear from Corey Canute, one of our reporters at PCHQ tonight, speaking with Morris MLA Shannon Martin. And that's the idea of the financial situation of the province of Manitoba. No secret, we have a very significant deficit that we're dealing with right now. The provincial debt has increased substantially over the last term that the NDP were here. And I think what I want to pick up on is, what do you expect the PCs are walking into here? Do you think that it's what it is, or are you concerned that there may be some things that have transpired regarding the numbers that may not go the way that the numbers have been suggested? Chris, we'll start with you.
Well, I think what you did clearly see over the last number of months was the cupboard doors were being opened pretty wide, and there were a lot of announcements being made across the province. And so, we're going to the new Conservative government is going to be looking at this and saying, what's left and what can they do about some of this. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they find when it comes down to it, and how are they going to justify that with where they want to head with lowering the PST in the long run and controlling deficit.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, and that's lots of when we go in with our ass in the last 6 months here. They said, well, we get into power. This is what we hope to, but we don't know what they wouldn't promise any dollars, no matter what, even if it was an easy program. Part of the thing, and a good example would that be is like Alice. They've promised that they were going to run the program, but there's no dollars committed to it, and it needs money. Like all these programs need money. I think more importantly, they're going to have to prioritize, and that's what I'm really looking for. There's been definitely a ratchet back on the agriculture spending, and I'll go back to my research and innovation. We've basically halved it in the last 8 years, down to $10 million from a $27 million budget line item, and that's in ag research, but in policy as well, whereas Saskatchewan's doubled theirs. So they've moved their funding. They had restricted budgets just like everybody else in the country, and they seem to prioritize agriculture a little bit more. So it's not maybe not new money, but maybe just reprioritizing things and making a move in a certain different direction. I think would be encouraged, but it'll be quite interesting. And then they start talking about. I think the more importantly is it's what's transparent and what can everybody understand here, because there's a lot of things that got shuffled around, I know, and it's going to be probably pretty eye-opening for everybody. When you're in power that long, like that's 16 years, it's a lot of things, a lot of skeletons can be built up.
So for you, Merv, any concern that the PCs are walking into a situation where the numbers have been said that they're one thing, they open up the books, run them the way they want, and maybe it's not even as rosy as it is now, and that's being tongue-in-cheek here?
I think traditionally governments do a review of long-term governments, and usually there is a surprise. I think the fact that the current government didn't introduce a budget this spring would give you a cause for concern.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brian's big challenge. I think once he gets into the audit of the budget and the money, he's got to find out what's committed. What can be stopped or at least slowed down. He's got to find ways to slow the spending stream down until he gets a handle on the revenues and the incomes, and then move forward from there. One of the arguments all the time, nothing in government always works perfectly. In fact, we have a lot of programs that don't work at all, but we've had them for so long that people just assume that we should keep them. And I think knowing Brian, I served on a red tape review committee with him, and he is thorough to the fine-tooth comb as far as if there's something that's not working that's costing governments, it'll be gone, and it'll be gone very quickly. And I think that's one of the ways, probably the way, that he can make it happen a lot quicker.
Well, I think very clearly for municipalities, that's going to be an important part of where we head as well, because many municipalities have real concerns when it comes to regulation and rules, and many of these rules and regulations have been put in 20, 30 years ago, and everything needs a sunset clause, everything needs to be reviewed. And so I think if they move forward in that, I think municipalities will be a strong partner in doing that.
One of the regs that Brian, when he chaired the reg committee, he said if you're going to introduce a new law, you have to get rid of 3. And we were still tethering horses. It was still on our legislative books. I mean, we don't need that. So at least he could justify, and it started to reduce the red tape that's there.
There could very well be ways that the government can actually find efficiencies, get things done more quickly, and not actually slow it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're about 18 minutes after 9 o'clock on Decision 2016. Time once again to head to the field, specifically to southwestern Manitoba for one of our reporters keeping an eye on the race that matters to you most.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm Barry Lamb in the CJRB newsroom. Doyle Panuke, the incumbent MLA for Arthur Verdon, will be returning to the Manitoba legislature. I had a chance to talk to Panuke about winning and returning on the government side of the legislature.
Well, I'm so honored to be the MLA for Arthur Verdon. Served 2 years, and I'm looking forward to serving 4 more. It's been a great constituency, great people. There's a lot of issues that we had to deal with in the last 2 years, and we want to make sure these issues get resolved, and especially with our health care and our infrastructure and our economy. We want to make sure that there's a voice from the southwest corner in government.
And looks like you'll be heading back with a huge majority on government side. What will that freedom allow you to do as government?
We'll be able to, make sure that we look out for best of Manitobans' best interest, and be able to take responsibility for fiscal management and reinvesting in places where we know that the province is going to grow, and it's good for all Manitobans, and a great place for Manitobans to live and want to do business and open for business. That's what we're looking for.
Doyle Panuke, the PC candidate in Arthur Verdon, the incumbent, re-elected tonight, easily defeating his challengers, Frank Goodon with the Manitoba Party and Lauren Topolniski with the NDP. For CJRB News, I'm Barry Lamb.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, live on CFAM Radio 950, CJRB Radio 1220, and web streaming tonight on Pembina Valley Online, Steinbach Online, Discover Westman, and PortageOnline.com. Now, we do want to bring you up to speed on what's happening. If you're just joining us tonight, Golden West Radio is projecting a progressive conservative majority government. Currently, the PCs are leading or elected in 40 ridings, the NDPs in 15, the Liberals in 2, and the Green Party is currently in none. Now, one thing that we were just checking on as we were listening to Barry Lamb reporting from Boissevain is that Rana Bukhari, the leader of the Liberal Party, throughout the night had been flirting with either first or second place in her riding of Fort Rouge, but actually at last count with 58 polls reporting she's now in third place in her riding, below the PC candidate of Audrey Gordon and the NDP candidate of Wab Canoe at 36.6%. Let's just touch on the Liberals once again here quickly. I think I don't want to forget about them despite their results, because it was a fresh campaign, as Dan mentioned earlier in the night. But what is this going to mean for the Liberal Party if they're get elected, yet we see John Gerard, who does appear he will be elected, returning, as well as Cindy Lamoureux for the riding of Burroughs, possibly adding a second seat for the Liberals. And Chris, how about we start with you?
Well, when you look a few terms back, you had a Gerard and a Lamoureux as the MLAs, Liberal MLAs at that time. You have a repeat of that, although with one of the same Gerards and a new Lamoureux, although from the same family. And so it's interesting to see how this, maybe it speaks to the smallness of the party in some ways, but I think when you look at where the Liberals are going to go, they're going to have really ask some serious questions about what is working for them, what isn't working for them, and where they go from here.
Dan, any thoughts?
And I think it comes down to the candidates. That was one thing that was kind of it disappointed me that. Murph touched on it before. It was the having that other choice.
Yes.
All of a sudden, it was we got into this horse race just between two parties, and that I don't think that serves anybody good. So I think if they're rebuilding, make sure that they have some decent candidates that in all of Manitoba. If they're going to be a Manitoba party, they better have some good representation. I think that probably hurt them more than anything. And just the organization of getting those people all together, because really, if you're not a PC and you're not an NDP, there's left, right.
Yeah.
Usually Liberals come up in the middle somewhere. That's just natural gravitation, and the party that happens to go to the center, the closest, usually wins the election. So that's Canadian, kind of the Canadian way. But it'll be interesting to see what their options are going forward. That's for sure.
You could say that Greg Selinger and before him Gary Dewar found the center before the PCs did, and that may have came in handy to secure them 4 majority governments in Manitoba. Merv, let's go back to you and just touch on the Liberal situation one more time, where their leader appears to be on the outs and the former leader in, as well as a second Liberal seat.
Different setup again. I worked with Kevin Lamoureux, and he was a great MLA for the riding, and I suspect his daughter will be the same. Obviously, hard work wins a seat, and she did that. I think the Liberals are going to have to step back. We know when the next election is. The date's already been set, so you got to get a leader, and that leader has to go out. And I often think of the Duff Roblin book, how he went out and he didn't look for conservatives. He looked for the best people in the community, and he asked them, who's your leader, who's your guy, and that's who he recruited. And he built a pretty strong alliance of rural and city, and I think that's what the Liberal Party has to do going forward. They have to organize. You cannot run 40, 50 candidates. You have to run a full slate. They have to be accredited. They have to be strong candidates, and you've got 4 years to do that. I give Brian a lot of credit for doing that with his. He put a lot of chains on his members and said, if you want to be a candidate for me, this is what you got to do. And those people, incumbents and newbies, fit that bill, and that builds your team a lot quicker.
25 minutes after 9 o'clock, you're listening to Decision 2016 on CJRB Radio, or CJRB Radio 1220, as well as CFAM Radio 950 across the Golden West Radio Network. And it's now time, one last time before 9:30, to head back out into the field and see what races that matter most to you.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm at Progressive Conservative Party headquarters in Winnipeg. This almost feels like a homecoming here, with the likes of Hanover Reef Stan Taves here, as well as Niverville Mayor Myron Dick, and even former Niverville Mayor Gord Damon. Lots of cheering over the last 20 minutes or so as are reporting, and the picture seems to be getting clearer with the Conservatives well out in front. And I see Conservative candidate for the Morris constituency, Shannon Martin, has just showed up. Hopefully I can get some comments from him shortly here. Reporting from PC Party headquarters in Winnipeg, I'm Shannon Dueck.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and we're just keeping an eye on some of the polls that are happening and some of the ridings we're keeping an eye on throughout the evening here. And it does seem like we're going to see a number of ridings party flip from NDP to PC. For example, the Interlake riding, Tom Navakshinoff was the incumbent. It appears that he, in fact, may end up in third place in that particular riding, with the PC candidate, Derek Johnson, currently leading the way quite handily. Now, one particular riding that we haven't spent a ton of time on tonight, but I did want to touch on very quickly here before we break away to our local newsrooms at 9:30, and that's Greg Selinger. You know, I think there was probably some thought out there that does he even have enough gas to win his own riding in this provincial election? And as of right now, with essentially all polls reporting in St. Boniface, Greg Selinger has been elected with 42% of the vote. I guess let's start with you, Chris, and just some very general thoughts on what you feel this says about at least his base in his particular riding.
Well, I think Premier Selinger did a lot of work in his own riding. He certainly had a strong connection to the Francophone community, and he put a big effort in that, I think, all throughout his terms as MLA. So I think that proves the numbers right now prove it, that that connection was very strong.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, and being a leader, I often wondered how they lead a party and then meanwhile look after your own constituents. It's good he's in Winnipeg. I guess he can do that quite easily, but it'll be and these guys, whether winners or losers, and that's an unfortunate thing. They're still they won their riding, but they lost the race, and that's too bad. They've put a lot. I know our Minister of Agriculture, Ron Costician, he put a lot of good years in and did some good work, and that's something that should be recognized as well. They lost their at the end of the day. But I think they can look back on what they did at the end of the day, and they served the public. So I think we shouldn't lose focus on that, even though they're getting beat up pretty bad here. But I think that's something that it's time. I guess we're moving on, but they should be recognized for the years they put in for public service as well.
And Merv, just before we wrap up and head to our local newsroom here, just your thoughts on former Premier Selinger being able to maintain his seat.
Well, it obviously speaks to his community. It is hard for communities sometimes to stand behind a person when the wave is coming. But one of the things I felt in politics and when I left politics is you come in with certain ambitions and certain goals, and you accomplish some of them and start some of them. And I think out of respect to Premier Selinger, we have to give him the kudos that he deserves. He's been a premier for a long time, and to get to that level, doesn't matter who you are. You've obviously got something that makes people do the right things at the right times, and I wish him well. I suspect he's got a lot of thinking to go forward with, and I salute him tonight.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. It is 9:30. Time now to break away to our local newsrooms for a local provincial election update.
This is CFAM News.
Good evening, I'm Candace Dirksen. Golden West Radio is predicting a progressive conservative majority government in Manitoba, marking the end of a 17-year NDP government in the province. Currently, the Progressive Conservatives are hovering around 40 seats in the Manitoba legislature. The NDP are around 16 seats and look to be forming the official opposition. The Liberals hold 2 seats, and the Green Party is coming up short, currently with 0 seats in the Manitoba legislature. PC incumbent and party leader Brian Pallister has been re-elected in Fort White constituency. PC Cliff Graydon has also been re-elected to a 3rd term in Emerson constituency, surpassing Liberal Lauren Brawl and NDP candidate Alana Jones. Dean Penner spoke with Graydon following his win.
Over the province, there was definitely a mood for change, and I think that's showing up in the polls today. But the people of the Emerson constituency have certainly humbled me again with the support that they've given me.
So what will be the priority as you get your things together and get everything in order?
Oh, gosh, I guess just to let this all sink in, but the priority, we've outlined what the first 20 or 25 things we'll do in the first 100 days. And the first priority that I see, the first opportunity we have is to cancel the vote tax. That's going to save Manitobans $1.25 million, or $1.5 million.
Incumbent Tory MLA Shannon Martin has also been re-elected in Morris constituency, beating out Liberal John Falk and NDP candidate Muhammad Ali. He offers his reaction to the win.
You know what? The short comment I give is wow. And there is no other word for tonight. We all had our hopes and aspirations for this evening. Our goal was obviously, we needed to pick up 10 seats to form a slim majority government. But to see the results that are rolling in tonight, I mean, this isn't just, this is history. This is historic territory, not just for us, but for us as a political party, but for Manitobans. And I think we've been given a very clear mandate by the people of Manitoba. And more importantly, I think the NDP have had a clear repudiation of what they have brought, or I guess wrought on Manitobans for the last 17 years, a clear rejection of their policies.
Meantime, PC incumbent Cameron Friesen has been declared the winner in Morden Winkler, defeating Benjamin Bodden of the Liberals, Mike Urachuk of the Green Party, and NDP candidate Elizabeth Lynch. Tory incumbent Blaine Peterson has also been declared re-elected in Midland, beating out Julia Sisler of the Liberal Party, Jacqueline Thoreau of the NDP, and Green Party candidate Stacey O'Neill. Golden West's election night coverage continues now with Decision 2016. I'm Candace Dirksen.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Hosting tonight's provincial election roundtable is Chris Sumner.
It's 9:33 on the Golden West Radio Network, and you're listening to Decision 2016. If you're just joining us this evening, Golden West Radio is projecting a progressive conservative majority government. Currently, PCs are elected or leading in 40 ridings, the NDP in 15, the Liberals in 2, and the Green Party currently in none. Now, we did just witness something that we were somewhat expecting as the evening went on, but it does now appear to be official, and that's that Brandon East will, for the first time, not be represented by an NDP candidate. And let's start with you, Merv, on this one. Len Islifson has won that riding over Drew Caldwell, who obviously represented it for many, many years since its creation. And with you being from that neck of the woods, I'd like to get your thoughts.
Well, I'm happy for Len. He has lived and grown up in that constituency, and it is a tough constituency. I represented Brandon East as part of my federal riding, and we found that the community was conservative-minded to a big degree. We just found we had to find the ways to present it to them because they were worried. They're a blue-collar part of the city, at least it used to be. It's changing. And I think the fact that Len grew up there has been a big role. Drew, to his credit, I mean, he's been there a long time. It's, again, when the wave hits you, you sometimes don't have much control over what the outcome is. I'm happy for Len. I think I just have to say it that way as opposed to any other way.
Sure. Well, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just north of Brandon, so the Brandon East is an interesting one. There's between the ACC moving, like he'll have some pretty big subjects to catch up to speed on fairly quickly. I guess being on council, he's got a little bit of a leg up, but there's that whole what are they going to do with Assiniboine Community College, and if they're going to move it up there, what are they going to move Brandon kids into the old ACC? And then there's Koch Industries, there's Maple Leaf, that's all his writing, and
it is
2 big employers that he's going to have to get to know real quickly, actually, and get up to speed.
How about you, Chris?
You know, it's interesting. Many communities have talked about, boy, if they could only be like Brandon and have on one side of the street have a conservative and one side of the street have the NDP and let them fight over who can bring more government benefits to that community. We'd all be happier, is what many communities have said. But, you know, Mr. Caldwell has worked very hard for his constituency. You know, you feel badly for him to go down with a wave, but that's politics. And at the same time, you have Len, who's going to work hard for that area. And so we look forward to, as AMM, to get to know these new MLAs and bring them up to speed on exactly the important things that are happening in their municipalities.
One thing we haven't give a ton of airtime to this evening, and that was the Green Party of Manitoba. And I think in some ridings they did put up a fairly decent fight. James Bedham, the leader, was running in Fort Garry Riverview, currently running in 3rd place in that riding with incumbent James Allam, with the NDP currently looking like he's probably going to lock that one up. Do you guys, in the long term, see the Green Party as a potential alternative to the Liberals, depending on where their policies go here? And do we see maybe in the next election a Green candidate actually making it to the legislature, Merv?
Very possible. I think that there is a need in Manitoba and a void that has to be filled. You know, you look at the Liberals, I think they ended up with 14%, and we've always said, you know, if they're at 22%, they're dangerous in the sense of getting the splits that they need. James Bedham, he impressed me, pretty aggressive in the leadership debate, but he was trying to make his point and trying to, I think, make a statement of fact. I don't necessarily agree with all the things that the Green Party proposes, but I do think that there'll be people, conservative, NDP, and Liberal, that'll be looking for that alternative, and it very well could be Green.
Okay. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, and we talked about the lack of environment talk in this election, and it's, you know, you call yourself a Green Party, and that's what they stand for, but I can't emphasize enough what the shock that's coming from our federal government with the talk of mitigating greenhouse gases. I think the Green Party does have some capacity there, even at the national level, to help us out in that discussion and understanding what we have to do as a province. But you know, they're going to have to find their grassroots, find some good candidates, and build, just like the other parties are going to have to do today. So how that all balances out in the end, they're pretty off. If you do that vote compass thing, they're pretty off onto the left, though, like way out there on some of their policies, and yet some of them do kind of make sense. So if anything, they'll influence I think the mainline parties and get some of that environment talk or green talk into their policies.
All right, and Chris, what are your thoughts about the Greens going forward?
Well, politics is more, and elections are more and more about the leader and less about the parties in general. And so, if they have a strong leader and he proves himself, if the Liberals get a strong leader or have their leader proves himself, that can change a lot of things. And we saw that clearly in this election, that either strength or weakness showed up, and people parked their votes accordingly.
We're now about 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock on Decision 2016. Time once again to head out to the field and see what's happening with the election races that matter the most to you.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
All of our local candidates have been declared, and it's blue across the board. Here in Portage La Prairie constituency, Ian Wisher took a substantial victory and was re-elected for a second term. In Lakeside PC, Ralph Eichler was also re-elected. First-time candidate Eileen Clark took a win for the PCs in Agassiz, and Tom Novakshinoff, a former NDP cabinet minister, has lost his seat, losing to the Progressive Conservatives' Derek Johnson. From the Portage La Prairie News Centre, I'm Brendan Harris.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
Thank you very much for listening to Decision 2016, and we want to talk a little bit with our panel about some of the things that we're seeing in northern Manitoba, specifically the ridings of the Paw and also Thompson. Typically, these have been NDP ridings historically. In the Paw right now, incumbent Amanda Laughlin is only leading by 20 votes over the PC candidate of Doug Lovestad. And in Thompson, in fact, it does appear that Steve Ashton will be defeated by the PC candidate Kelly Bindle. So let's just get some thoughts on what we're seeing in the northern ridings here. And obviously, if Steve Ashton is not returning to the NDP cabinet, boy, that is going to certainly come into play when we talk leadership race, which I think we all know is going to be happening for the NDPs at some point in the future. Chris?
That's astounding to see having Thompson move blue. Obviously, that says a lot of people also maybe a lot of people stayed home. And I think that's maybe the evidence in Thompson. We'd have to look at the numbers more closely, but that's really significant. That's very rare to see Thompson move in that direction.
And I think that northern strategy probably helped the Conservative PCs out quite a bit. And there is the Churchill issue. That whole port, that whole how are we shipping grain? Like from an agriculture point of view, I think that just speaks to maybe people are seeing that there is some policy that needs to be addressed from a major party. PC party was the only one that really spoke about that, and maybe they're seeing the fruits of their labor.
Yeah, how about you, Murph?
Well, I think Mr. Ashton's been in the news a lot in the last few months, and not necessarily for all the right reasons. And when people decide that a change is coming, those kind of things factor into it, and either you don't show up and vote, or you change your vote in the ballot box, and that may very well be what's reflected in tonight's numbers.
Let's pose this question now, and I'm not going to work under any assumptions here. I want to leave this wide open for the three of you. Do you think we will see a leadership review on the NDP side of the legislature? And Murph, how about we start with you?
Absolutely. It'll happen. Some will want it to happen soon to take advantage of the downside of losing an election. I think my advice would be to take some time. There's a lot of feelings that have to be mended when you're devastated by this number. So I suspect that'll take a period of time of reconciliation, and then how do we move forward?
Okay, Dan, your thoughts?
From my point, Murph can talk from experience. For my world, I get voted in once a year, so it can change on the turn of a dime. So I would say if I was a party member, and I would be calling for some kind of review anyways, at least have the discussion, and where that ends up at the end of the day, that's totally up to the party.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
Well, I think when you look at when we take a step back, a year back, and you look at what happened during the leadership review, and the Premier only won by just a few votes, I can only imagine that'll be even tougher as we move forward when you lose an election and you lose quite a number of MLAs.
Now, this may be hard to talk about tonight, and again, we'll maybe work under somewhat of an assumption that there will be a leadership review on the NDP side of things. I'm going to throw this question out. Do you guys see any names that are coming back to the ledge that could be particularly involved in a leadership review? Merv, what do you think?
I think Kevin Chief will be the next leader of the NDP party in Manitoba. I think he fits everything that they ask for. He's a First Nations person. He's a leader. As a Conservative, I see him as a threat because I think he's very good.
All right. And Dan, any names come to mind on the NDP side?
From the rural perspective, I have to look at the list. It's pretty short, that's for sure. I can't. I agree with Merv. That's a pretty good pick. I would say. I don't know who they have inside their party, like who's left there at a 14th seat. So.
Yeah. Chris?
Well, it's going to be interesting as this moves forward and seeing who actually gets elected tonight. Just seeing James Alum elected, I think he has been a strong minister and he has influence in the party. You see Kevin Chief, who AMM has had a decent relationship with. And you see new MLAs like Wab Canoe, who's elected. Although somewhat controversial, I think a strong leader nonetheless.
About 16 minutes away from 10 o'clock on Decision 2016. Time once again to head back out to the field another time and see what's happening in the election races that matter most to you.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
Good evening, I'm Corey Canute, reporting live from Canadians Polo Park in Winnipeg. The party's just getting started here tonight as the PCs have been declared the majority government here in Manitoba. I'm here with Morden Winkler, re-elected MLA, Cameron Friesen. Cameron, how does it feel?
Oh, this is a very exciting moment, Corey, and one, as you know, that has been a long time coming for our party. It's been years since we've been able to celebrate like this in the room, and to see so many people coming in here tonight. I'm seeing Morden Winkler, people who have taken the time to come here. I see people from all over the province who have come here, and we are so excited to see these results coming in and the extent of this victory for the PC party of Manitoba.
What do you think this win will do for the Morden Winkler constituency?
Well, I mean, I always say there's no substitute for hard work. We started in Morden Winkler. We went out there and did the real work of that retail politics, knocking on doors, finding supporters, identifying them, and on today, a real effort to move them to the polls to make sure that they were voting and getting that vote in. Into the future, of course, I mean, we know that this level of majority will allow us as a party to really take and implement those policies that we believe will help to move this province forward. Listen, the NDP have had 16 and a half years. All we asked Manitobans for was 4 years for the opportunity to move an agenda forward, and we're so excited that Manitobans have put their trust in us tonight.
Thanks, Cameron. As you can hear behind me, people are in a celebratory mood, and it looks like the celebrations will go on into the night. For Golden West Radio, reporting from Canadians Polo Park, I'm Corey Canute.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network, and at this time we're going to throw the question out to our panelists tonight about who they think will fill some key positions in the PC cabinet. We're going to see a lot of new names sitting in the Manitoba legislature on the PC side, and how about we start with you, Chris? Just give us some names as to who you see maybe filling some key roles.
Well, I think they're going to try and find a balance, of course, between the rural and the urban side. There's many new MLAs to choose from, and so I think the new government will have it'll be a difficult task actually to decide who is going to be the best to serve. You know, people like obviously on the municipal side, you see people like Scott Fielding, who from the city of Winnipeg, who's been a strong city councillor and now is an MLA. We also see Eileen Clark, in Agassiz. She was the former vice president of the Association of Municipalities, and so I think she will have a strong influence. And so it'll be interesting to see who they all see. Obviously, my MLA, I wish he'll be in there. But when you have that many MLAs, and when you have a government that says they're going to reduce the amount of the cabinet, that's going to be some tough calls.
How about you, Dan? Any names come to mind that you think might be filling some key posts?
Just writing them down here. I guess one thing that I was always amazed about as I do my job, you do work with a lot of the critics, and you see a lot of grooming going on when they play those portfolios. And I think Cliff Cullen actually was a hydro critic for a while, and that kind of surprised me. Ian Wishart, he was very instrumental in bringing the Alice platform in. I would assume he'll have some kind of portfolio, whether it's environment. Shannon Martin's another one that he's been strong advocate for environment too. Blaine Peterson, agriculture. Those are the ones that are kind of common. They're the critics before, so maybe that was in preparation for him. But more importantly, they're a nice, capacity. They were building capacity for the new candidates that were coming in. I don't have a clue who they would be doing for education or even health. I don't know. Maybe you guys would have inside the city that would be, to me, and intergovernmental affairs too. I don't know.
I think one of the challenges when it comes down to it, though, when you've been in opposition for quite some time, whether it's been a health critic or so on, they've said a lot.
Yes.
And to then be the minister it can sometimes come and come back and bite you. And so I'm wondering if they may not make some decisions specifically on new faces and also people who have not necessarily had the critic portfolio.
Yeah. How about you, Merv? What are you thinking?
Well, I think obviously he has to look at a lot of things. He has to look at regional. He has to look at experience. He has to have a balance of men and women, First Nations. I'm probably going to talk more the names that I remember and know. Shannon Martin, obviously, and Calvin Gertzen, I think, are both fine and have great adaptation skills. Scott Fielding, obviously, history with the city. Reg Helwer out of Brandon's a very strong guy on the finance side. Myrna Dreger, I can't believe her and Heather Stephenson won't have a place in that government. Whether, again, I agree. The challenge in being a politician is to say all the right things, but every time you say something wrong, it's going to be written down and you're going to hear it over and over. And when you're a critic, you tend to speak not more than you should, but you're more involved and more engaged, and sometimes you say things that the party policy doesn't necessarily fit
it'll be really good if they are allowed to engage and it's set their own course. So I think there's an opportunity from what they learned on the opposition side, so at least they can be advisory for each other, even if they didn't play that role. You're right, because along comes that baggage all of a sudden that bites you, but totally different time. We look at what's happened with regulations and how many regulations. We didn't even talk on the agriculture side. Like we have pesticide bans, we have fertilizer bans, we have drainage water, not bans, but regulations that I know AMM would even want their surface water management strategy that needs to be looked at. So there's lots of places that we can just start by eliminating regulations, see who starts jumping up and down for that one. But I think they have a lot of good capacity there to help and bring those new people into and go forward.
We're about 9 minutes away from 10 o'clock on Decision 2016. One last time here, we're going to head out to the field to the southwestern Manitoba and find out what's happening in the races that mean the most to you.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now for an update on the races that matter most to you.
I'm Barry Lamb with CJRB News. PC candidate in Spruce Woods, Cliff Cullen, the incumbent MLA, has been re-elected. Cullen talked about tonight's win.
Well, I'm really excited about it, and I want to certainly thank the voters of Spruce Woods for showing their support in me, and I look forward to representing them for the next 4 years. Obviously, a very exciting time for Manitoba, and it's a change. It's going to be a change, and I think a change for the better, and I think it bodes well for rural Manitoba, and it looks like a pretty significant victory for the Progressive Conservatives, and it's been a long time coming, so we're certainly happy to see those numbers.
You've been around for a few elections. How nice to be on government side of house here.
Well, I hear it's a good thing. We're really looking forward. Obviously, we've laid out a lot of what we want to try to accomplish over the next 4 years. We've got a short-term game plan in terms of what we want to try to accomplish in the first 100 days. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges out there. We know that, and we want to work with Manitobans to try to accomplish those things in their best interest. We're going to continue with that dialogue.
What are your chances of making that Pallister cabinet? Looks like a smaller number, but do you see yourself possibly with a role there?
Well, that's entirely a decision that the leader will make, and he'll have to decide from the slate of candidates we've got who he wants to serve and represent him.
Cliff Cullen, the MLA re-elected in Spruce Woods constituency. For CJRB News, I'm Barry Lamb.
You're listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network. Now, back to Chris Sumner and the Provincial Election Roundtable.
7 minutes away from 10 o'clock on Decision 20. Listening live right now on CFAM Radio 950, CJRB Radio 1220, and web streaming throughout the province on Golden West Radio websites. Now, before we get into our final segment here and review and discuss where things are going to go from here for the new Progressive Conservative majority government, a bit of a lay of the land and recap as we head toward 10 o'clock. If you are just joining us, Golden West Radio is projecting a Progressive Conservative majority government. Currently, the PCs are elected or leading in 40 ridings, the NDP in 14, the Liberals in 3, and the Green Party at this time in none. All MLAs, incumbent PCs south of the Trans-Canada Highway, will be heading back to the Manitoba legislature. We're talking about Arthur Verdon, Spruce Woods, Midland, Morden Winkler, as well as Morris, Emerson, Laver Andre, Steinbach, and Dawson Trail. So all of those PC candidates will be heading back to the Manitoba legislature. From a leadership perspective, some points to pass along there. Brian Pallister has been elected in the Fort White constituency, of course, the leader of the Progressive Conservatives and now the Premier-elect of Manitoba. The former Premier of Manitoba, Greg Selinger, has been re-elected in his St. Boniface riding for the NDP. A surprise, I think, for some this evening is that Rana Bokhari, the Liberal leader, she was running in Fort Rouge and, in fact, at this time is in third place in that riding with only 8 polls to report. In fact, it does appear that NDP candidate Wab Kinew will be heading to the legislature to represent Fort Rouge. So that will mean that, at least as it stands right now, it appears the Liberals will have 2 or 3 seats in the legislature. Former leader John Gerard in River Heights, Cindy Lamoureux in Burroughs, and in fact, Judy Clausen is leading in the Kiwatnuk riding, which is in northern Manitoba. Well, gentlemen, we're coming down the home stretch here. It's been 2 hours of discussion on Decision 2016, and at this point in time, I think what we need to do is maybe take a step back from the table here, get our 30,000-foot view glasses on, and kind of review what has happened tonight in general and what you suspect may happen going forward. And Chris, how about we start with you?
Well, I think it's clear. A government lost power. And the Conservatives ran a good, solid campaign that didn't have a lot of mistakes. They took care. They were very well organized, and the Liberals simply didn't have the organization to pull it off. And so, when it comes down to it, we have a new government that has a lot of work ahead, a lot of new MLAs, and a lot of people excited to govern this province.
Dan?
Yeah, and a new government is correct. Like, as far as what happened, it was said very, way on early. This was the PCs to lose. I think that we proved that tonight. They pulled off a good campaign. That's for sure. Nice and clean. Did the issues get discussed that were really important to Manitobans? I don't know. I was I don't want to say disappointed, but I was challenged at times to really get down to what they were trying to do. Besides their press releases and their platforms and that, they were pretty clear. But I think we got down into the weeds way too often as far as saying, here's what my future vision is. And I did hear that more from the PCs than probably any other party. So looking forward to that conversation and what is in store here. So, we had a 16-year legacy, and now we're going on to hopefully, we'll see, at least another 4 years of one kind of government anyways.
All right, Merv, how about you?
Sunny days.
Yes.
No, I think whenever a government changes, obviously things change dramatically, and I suspect there'll be a lot of people employed by government. They'll be waking up tomorrow and just wondering what the future might hold for them and where the government goes. Obviously, Brian's driven to reduce the size of government, not necessarily what they do, but the size. And I suspect that'll be one of the first things on his agenda. I can remember winning my first election as an MLA, and as tired as you are from being up all night celebrating with your colleagues, you get up the next day and want to drive to Winnipeg and start working. And I suspect that's how everybody will feel tomorrow, even as tired as they are. They're chomping, they're ready to get at it, and I think Brian will provide the leadership necessary that I think we'll see a very well-functioning government very quickly.
We'll wrap up with one last question for each of you tonight, and that's from your perspective. So, Chris, obviously from AMM, and Dan from CAP, and Merv, we'll leave it a little more open for you, obviously. Is your number one priority at your particular neck of the woods? So, Chris Gertson, president of Association of Manitoba Municipalities, the number one priority for AMM moving forward with Brian Pallister and the new PC government?
Well, I think very clearly we're going to be looking at continue to talk about infrastructure. It was the top of mind of all Manitobans when it came to the election. It was top of mind of municipalities, and the government does want to solve this. The new government will want to solve the challenge that's ahead of us. It won't be easy, but I think that's something we're going to be looking at, as well as reducing regulation and really examining, are we doing things the right way now? And I think we can be a good partner with the new government looking into that, and we look forward to sitting down with them in the first 100 days.
Dan Mazur, president of Keystone Agricultural Producers, the number one priority of CAP with our new government.
Well, that'd be setting priorities for agriculture. I think between the infrastructure, and we wholeheartedly work with AMM on trying to get that animal wrestled down and get some focus onto that file. And even the priorities for agriculture, we talk about creating innovation and research and adapting. We are hitting a changing climate, and I very much look forward to how are we going to spend those precious dollars and work with this new government to enhance our agriculture industry in Manitoba.
And Merv, how about you? Number one priority that Mr. Pallister and the PC government should be looking at here?
Well, I'm going to speak for the taxpayer, and I think it's important that he gets spending under control. He gets programs that are productive and efficient, and I don't mind paying taxes. I don't have any friends that don't mind paying taxes. We just want value for what we pay for, and if he can move us that way, I know it won't happen overnight, but that's the direction I'd like to see this government go, and I believe that that's the direction they will go.
You've been listening to Decision 2016 on the Golden West Radio Network and web streaming tonight throughout Golden West Radio websites throughout Southern Manitoba. I'd like to take this time to sincerely thank our panel guest tonight, Chris Gertson, of course, president of AMM.
Thank you.
And Dan Mazur, president of Keystone Agricultural Producers.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
And former MP and MLA Merv Tweed, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It has certainly been a blue wave this evening throughout Southern Manitoba and, in fact, beyond. We have noticed a number of ridings that have flipped from NDP to PC, and truly it will be a new day for the Manitoba legislature as we wake up on Wednesday morning of Brian Pallister and the Progressive Conservatives. Many more storylines will come from this evening beyond tonight and the fact that we have a new government. What's the future of the NDP party, specifically their leader, Greg Selinger? What's the future of the Liberal Party and their current leader, Rana Bokhari? She was unable to get elected, and there are many, many more questions to be answered beyond those couple storylines there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening throughout the Golden West Radio Network. Thank you very much for listening on CFAM Radio 950 and CJRB Radio 1220. We do wish you a great evening, and we are now going to pause and break to our local newsrooms for a local election update.
This is CFAM News.